nature was the next divine appointment, suggesting that my son and I were still connected, and the messages, dreams, and whispers of thoughts that I was receiving were indeed from him. I'd been inviting my son to connect with me by my thoughts, and what I learned was that our hearts are the strongest electric and magnetic field in our bodies. With this information, my heart mended even more. This was and always has been the heart of the matter for me, to know that the feeling of being connected to him isn't just wishful thinking. In fact, and I can trust the different ways we are communicating with each other. So that really helped me to make sense of things even more. I continued to see more signs in that way. My work life continued on a much better track. I left things that no longer served me much more easily, and I continued to just heal and grow, and I learned to trust. And there's a friend of mine here in this room. We went out many times after work because she had the same situation in her life, but on the opposite end as a child, as I've met so many people along these last few years. And you know when you're thinking about somebody and they call you, you know when they send you something, you know when that connection is. And that's the connection of our hearts, of this magnet. You know. I then move into some other chapters, but I'm going to I figured out that I needed to have a purpose, and I knew I was getting stronger. When you try to find a purpose in your pain, you actually come from the standpoint of strength, even if you're still hurting. You might think that it's still impossible. You might not quite believe what you're hearing or you're seeing or you're believing. But when you do start to say, what has this got to do with anything? I can't stay here anymore. But then you go, this is going to mean something. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know where, but that's when you start to know you're getting stronger. And with that, a lot of the blame, a lot of the nonsense that goes along with what happened in this situation starts to wane, because I wouldn't be having the life that I have now with the relationship with that man right there and the life that I'm leading in Idaho had I not been given a lot of thought to forgiveness and the fact that I have grown stronger. I then decided, it was 5 years later, and it was tough. Christmases were hard. Birthdays were hard because I still hadn't heard from him and I didn't know where he was. I continued to write my monthly blog on Never Give Up Mom. And I continued to dream. But the 5th year was excruciating, you know, when you've had enough. And I still had some things inside of me that were really bitter for me. And so I did a walkabout. I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'd always been there as a tourist. I'd always been there having fun. But this time I decided that I was going to get rid of something that was within me, even if I never saw my son again or ever heard from him again, that would never come back to haunt me. And when I came back, my equine therapist said, I know what you got rid of. You got rid of shame. There's so much of that when we go through trauma. And what I found out in Santa Fe was that a lot of the stuff that I'd been carrying around was never mine to begin with. So I did a lot of deep diving, and I did a lot of core group, and I did a lot of hiking, and I did more equine therapy. And every place I went to, I saw that horses. And horses always, I knew when horses came to me, like they're like puppies. It sounds bizarre, but they just want to nuzzle you and kiss you and be around you. And I knew when all of that was happening more and more, I was letting down. I was feeling better. I want to skip to chapter 10 and begin to wrap this up. I came back from Santa Fe and I had an enormous amount of breakthrough, and a lot of that was the fact that I didn't have to carry around the blame for a lot of the stuff that I carried around all my life, particularly in this case with my son. And so one night, this is when the writing started to get really vivid. I don't know if any of you have been woken up at 3 in the morning. You can't go back to sleep and you've got to write something down. It is spirit. It is grace. It's the divine talking to you without question, because there's no way I could go back. I was also committed to writing this book and getting this and my book trailer to Hay House by December the 10th. But I got this dream one night, and I believe that it did, without question, came from my son. And I still felt, you know what it was? I still felt tethered to the fact that I didn't know, even though I didn't know where he was, I wanted his blessings. So, one night, I got this sentiment. Don't blame yourself for all that happened. Don't blame yourself for what you could not do. Be glad, for I've grown up, and I know you're proud of me too. I can see, I can read every little word you've written, and soon you'll know all the answers to your questions. So set your heart free to be everything you have always wanted to be. I want you to go on a dream. I want you to never stop being who you really are, for you have always been my shining star. We will see each other again. It's only a matter of time. So until then, love yourself. Voyage to your heart's content. I'll meet you where the words are heaven sent. I did a wedding before I came here this afternoon, and I swear, dealing with that high intensity of like somebody getting married in 5 or 6, as hard as that was, this is harder. So my son and I were connecting. I was getting dreams, I was getting messages. And in chapter 10, it's called Dare to Dream. And things really started coming quickly at me at this point in time. Whenever I would ask for something, I'd receive it, every single time. One day I asked Wayne Dyer, because I was having one of those really crappy writing days, and I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense. I'm hoping my editor will write the rest of this book for me. And I asked Wayne to come into my space. And if you've ever seen his movie, The Shift, there's a piano piece in there that's so haunting and beautiful and genuine. And I'd never heard it on my Pandora. And as soon as I started writing, I heard that song. And I knew, he said, just keep going. Just keep going, you're almost there. Dare to Dream is exactly that. One night, it was 3:34 in the morning. I was awoken by this voracious, detailed, like their dream. A dream where you see in the movies that people are walking around, but they're dreaming. I'm not a dreamer. I don't dream like that. I sleep or I don't sleep, but I don't dream like that. And I pulled a quote from this, and it says, reach high for the stars lie hidden in your soul. Dream deep, for every dream precedes the goal. And that's Pamela Volstar. That night at 3 o'clock in the morning, I had the most vivid dream of my life. And it took me through an arcade that my son and I used to frequent and go to. I walked through the door, and I remember where because all the boys would be playing their pinball and all that stuff. And I was just walking through the room, and I saw him in my dream, but he was older. He was 11 when he was taken. I saw him one other time for 5 minutes when I chose to go against the wishes of these people, and I saw him at his school, and I didn't see him again for 8 years. So I walked through this dream, and I'm seeing where he loved to play pinball, and it was just he's standing here with all his buddies, and he looks up at me, and he acknowledges me, and I was shocked. And then he goes back to playing the pinball, like all boys do, right? They're like, yeah, that's great, let's go back. So I look at him, and it's like I'm floating through this arcade. I then decide to walk through another room, and all of a sudden I see him again, and it's years later, but it's only moments later in a dream. He looks at me this time, and he acknowledges me in a more mature way, as if he was saying to me, I know you're here. I know you're here. Then very slowly goes back to playing a game, but he's older. And all of a sudden, in the midst of this dream, every moment that was going by in the dream, I was getting more comfortable. Like I was just, all of a sudden I was like, wow, it's okay. It's okay. I'm getting hungry in the dream. I walk outside, I know where there's a hot dog stand, I know where everything laid out, how that place laid out. I walk outside and I look for the hot dog stand, it's not there. And all of a sudden the whole place had been rearranged. I walk out further into the area that was the golf area. And I see that somebody had changed the whole thing. It was white picket fences, it was vendor places, it was a lot like this. It was white, and I could smell food in my dream. I started to smell, for whatever reason, fish sandwiches and french fries, which of course I love. And I walked towards that smell. As I walked through the crowds of people, all of a sudden the crowd starts opening and all the noise starts hushing. And I continue to walk forward and I see him standing there as a man in my dream. I ask him if he wants to have a meal with me. He says, yes, I would. I buy our food. We sit down, and for the first time in 8 years in my dream, we have a meal, and it's peace. It's the peace that surpasses all understanding.